Hello and welcome to Stable and Scale, one of the place to learn and share wisdom. I am your Lakshman. In today's video, we will be discussing how to Dockerize your .NET Core API. So, without wasting any time, let's get started. The things we will be discussing in this video is what's involved, how it works, and how to implement is actually the demo with the prerequisites. So let's get into it. First, what's involved? The things which is involved in this dockerizing the app is Docker first, and as we are dockerizing a .NET API, which is a .NET Core, is a core platform we'll be using it. That's get involved, and we'll be using some CLI tools, which for that we need a SDK which need to be installed in your system. That's the actual which involved, which is .NET SDK is predominantly used for building our applications. Then VS Code, which is the IDE, most famous IDE, which we will be using it. It is involved, and then we need a Docker extensions for Visual Studio Code so that we can get start our Docker file quick easily. So these are all things which is involved. The next thing is how it works. First, the things we'll be doing is first we will be creating a .NET API which we're using the .NET CLI. Then we will run our application whether it is actually running. Then we had a Docker support for that our .NET API. Then we will Dockerize the app and we'll run the application in as Docker. At last, how to implement these are all things we actually implement for implementation. The prerequisites very simple. We need a Docker, we need a VS Code, we need a .NET SDK. Any version of SDK is okay for you. For latest it is actually the 7, or else you can use a .NET 6, or you can still use .NET 3.1 or .NET 5, whichever is installed on your system. We can get start deploying, creating our API and dockerizing it. And we need any terminal for us to run the CLIs. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's get into the demo. We will start creating our API, run it local, Dockerize, and run it on Docker, and we will give you some tips and tricks. So let's get started. First, let's create our .NET API. So with the command .NET new web API -n .NET 7 API, enter. So it will start creating our project. For the .NET CLI, we need to install a .NET SDK. Once the SDK is got installed, you will get the command here. Okay, and you can even see .NET version, it's hyphen, it's 7.0 currently at present. So I created a .NET 7 API. So you can list there was a folder it's created. Let's go inside that folder and code.enter. It opens up my Visual Studio Code and it gets started. First and foremost, the good thing on developing is git init and its status got git ignore, and it asks okay, yes, let's add those files. Then let exclude bin obj and .vs code files outside the git. So now we have 8 files. Git add, git commit, it has shell commit. So the code is got committed. Now what we need to do is we created it, we need to run it. So first .NET build, let's build the app first in a CLI. Once the build is completed, see the build is got completed. Now we are gonna do is .NET run. Let's see what the port it's getting open up. When you are creating with .NET Visual Studio, you have some default generated ports, and as well as here also, which is the port is 5260. Let's open up 5260, and slash weather forecast is the default API which get created with our base API. So you can see there was some weather forecast coming up. Usually the browser doesn't come up like this. I have added a extension called JSON viewer which displays my JSON in like this. Okay, so now our application gets up and running. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shut it off, and there will be no reply here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create add a Docker support in to the .NET API. You can create it as in a two ways. One, you can directly create a Docker file here and you can start typing all the commands, or else if the IDE supports, you can add a Docker extension in the VS Code and you can generate the Docker file for you. It will generate. Actually, you can see there was a .NET Core, .NET Console, it's Node.js, Python, Java, C++, Go, Ruby, and others. You can create. There was a lot of range of support on Docker, and now we are gonna create in .NET ASP Core. Okay, so most prefer is Linux. Don't go for Windows. Actually, it will take a huge amount of time, and it will take a huge amount of MB when we are gonna Dockerizing and running in on orchestration, which is clusters. Okay, so Linux is the most preferred one, Linux, and a default port I'm going to separate it. Actually is 80. Now I'm not going to use the Docker Compose. In Dockerizing there was another option called Docker Compose. Okay, so we will be discussing the Docker Compose on upcoming videos. Okay, so now there was a base image created. Let me explain this Docker image first. It is a multi-layer Docker image which consists of one base image and one more called build image. Okay, you can see there was a two images called .NET ASP.7.0 and .NET SDK 7.0. SDK is primarily used for building an application in .NET. Okay, the other one ASP.NET 7.0 is application for hosting the application. It has only the runtime, not the entire stack inside it. Okay, whatever the build needed, it will be inside the SDK image, and whatever the runtime is actually the ASP.NET, which is the base image, which doesn't have the build all the codes inside that image. Okay, so and once it gets started, the from is the index, which is from which image I am going to take it for building my Docker image. Okay, then we will be there was a working directory which is created, which is on app as a name. Then we are exposing 80 port. Okay, then there was a env getting creator, which is ASP.NET Core underscore URL, means it's a environment URL which is hosted on 80 at present. So once that is done, so there will be the form from which image I'm actually needing it, and towards the worker servers and other stuffs. Okay, then it uses a .NET publish option, and there was a these informations getting started. Okay, There will be a one more Docker file I would like to introduce. Actually, let me delete this. There was another way, which is ASP.NET Core, Linux. Yes, I just want to override it. Here you see there was some difference in this image. You see it is exposed in 526, and you can see if it is not in 80, there was something called add user. This is the most important thing which you need to consider while running the Docker image. This is the tip for you if you are still here. What it is, if you are running your application on the root node, it should not be run as a root user. It's because if when the Docker image goes out, it has some level of permission where we can change and manipulate. Okay, and most of the organization using Docker image, which consists of non-root users. So here we are creating a new user and giving the permissions only to run an application which consists of -app. Okay, that folder you can see show one read access read write for app user for app. Okay, and once it is done, we can even change this port A to 80 and this port into 80. Once we got saved it, now the app is getting exposing into 80, and we having a non-root user explicit ID which will be accessing only that folder. This is coming right now. Most of the organization it's using Sonar Lint or Sonar Cloud for their validation of build. It proposes to not run the Docker file as a root user. It will throw. So currently, and then you need to explicitly type what are all the files and folders you need. Actually, for this we am going with dot, but for the production use cases we need to explicitly define what are all the files or folders which is required to be inside the Docker, even if you have a Docker ignore file. So once this is all done, I am gonna build it with the build command, just I made it handy. So it gets all the build and information. It's getting started. So as I already have these two SDKs which is on local, so it fetches from the internet and from local, and the build is got completed. But if you are going to build it, it will take a bit of time, which will be around maximum 30 seconds to 40 seconds. Within a minute the build will get done. So once that is done, I'm going to start running it. Now the application is got running in the port 80, which has a non-root user, and I am exposing that port. Okay, I need to switch the port right, which is to 80 and 5. Let's make it 5260. Just copying it, and the app is getting running. So let me open up the Chrome and run. You see this application is currently running from the Docker, where it is fetches the information and the stuffs. And if you want to see in a Docker, if you already have a Docker upgraded, you can see there was a Docker image which is getting running, and there will be a Docker file, and inside it you will be able to see all the commands it's actually, and it's pretty much giving what are all the vulnerabilities where we need to address and what are all the base images which is getting used. And one more main thing you need to check is it is 217 MB. If as it is in a Linux, if it is running in the Windows, at least it will take at least 500 MB minimum for us to run an application. So when we are seeing using the Linux, it's most faster and the image will pick up very fast. If you are going to run this Dockerized application into Kubernetes cluster, it will pick fast and it will roll it off. If it is in a Kubernetes or any container apps instance or any container apps, it will kickstart quickly and it can scale up very easily. So at this we what we have done is we have created a .NET Core API and we run it locally first. Then we add a Docker support, and with how to run with a non-root user we've seen it, and how to change the ports and expose the ports we have seen it. Then we run that build that image and we run that app. The one more tip where I could suggest to you is, if you want to develop your .NET API inside a Docker, you just need to add a view option, which is you need map the map the actual directory into the app suppose directory, which can't be a no, ASP.NET. It has to be inside the SDK. Whenever there was a change, you can build it and run it, you can able to do it. Okay, so that's the end of this demo. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification for more videos on greatest and latest in technologies. See you next time.